4 weeks. That is all the time that passed between the two pictures you just saw. On the left, a bare green stem about the size of a pencil poked into a clay pot of plain potting soil on my back porch table. On the right, that very same clay pot, covered top to bottom in pink roses. There was no greenhouse involved, no fancy spray, and nothing you cannot find in your kitchen or your garden shed for about $2. Now you would think a rose that came up that fast and that cheap would be a delicate little thing, but it is just the opposite. A rose you grow this way will outlive nearly every rose you could buy at the garden center. I have one growing beside my front porch that has been through ice storms, late freezes, and one terrible drought, and it has come back every single spring for more than 30 years. Stay with me to the end, honey, because the reason a rose grown this way just about refuses to die comes down to one specific thing sitting below the soil line. Once you see it, you will finally understand why so many store-bought roses give up after a winter or two. I'm Debra Wilson. I have been growing flowers for more than 50 years, ever since I was a little girl at my Grandma Hazel's elbow. And these days, my yard is the most colorful one on the block, if you ask my neighbors. Most of what I know about roses came straight from Grandma Hazel, and she never once bought a rose bush in her whole life. Every rose in her yard started as a cutting from a plant she admired, and half the roses in mine started the very same way. Now, I would guess you have bought a rose or two in your day. Maybe more than two. You pick out a pretty one at the garden center in May. $20, maybe $25. It blooms its heart out that first summer, and you are so proud of it. Then winter comes. The next spring, half the canes are black and dead. Or worse, the rose comes back, but it is not your rose anymore. Instead of those big, soft blooms you paid for, you get long, wild, thorny canes with little dark red flowers that look nothing like the picture on the tag. So you dig it out, you drive back to the store, and you hand them another $20. I did that sad little dance for years myself, honey, and I want you to hear me say this plainly. It was never your fault. You did not water it wrong, and you did not prune it wrong. There is something about the way most store roses are put together that sets them up to struggle in a cold winter. And those strange wild canes are the biggest clue of all to what I promised you at the start, so tuck them in the back of your mind. We will come back to them at the very end, and it will all make sense. Today we are going to sidestep that whole mess. I am going to show you how to grow a brand new rose from a simple cutting, the way Grandma Hazel always did, for the price of a spoonful of honey. Now every step I am about to walk you through comes right out of a little book I put together called Debra's 30-Day Bloom Protocol. It is my gentle day-by-day system for turning big, leafy, stubborn plants into bloomers in 30 days, built on the old pantry and shed methods my grandmother used, and it is written out plain for hydrangeas, roses, peonies, dahlias, and perennials. Week 1 walks you through diagnosing before you feed with the simple soil test Grandma swore by, the sun audit that changes everything, and learning whether your plant blooms on old wood or new wood. Week 2 covers your corrections, feeding for flowers the honest way, the right cut at the right time, and the 5-minute deadheading habit that keeps blooms coming. Weeks 3 and 4 keep your hands steady while the first buds appear, and there is a per plant bloom playbook in the back, one simple page for each flower. It is 122 pages, and right now it is $17, marked down from $47. $17 against another summer of leaves and no flowers. Now go ahead and grab your phone and open up your camera, the same one you use to take pictures. Point it at that square code on your screen and hold it steady for a second. A little link will pop up, give it a tap, and it will take you straight to the book. And if you are watching on your phone right now, The link is waiting for you right down below in the description. Take your time. There is no rush at all. I'll wait right here. All right, honey, let's go make a rose. Before we take a single cutting, let's gather everything up on the potting bench. You will need a pair of hand pruners, clean and sharp. You will need a clay pot about 6 inches across with a drainage hole in the bottom. You will need a small bag of plain potting soil. You will need a teaspoon of honey from the pantry. And you will need 1 empty gallon milk jug rinsed out. That is the whole shopping list, and I would bet you own most of it already. If you had to buy every last bit of it brand new, you might spend $8 or $10, and the pruners would be most of that. Compare that to $20 for 1 store rose every single time one gives up on you. All right, let's go find our stem. Step 1. Choose your stem. The best time to take a rose cutting is early summer, right after a bloom fades. For most of the country, that means June or July. Walk out to a rose you love, one of yours or a neighbor's, with permission and a smile, and look for a stem that just finished flowering. You want a stem about as thick as a pencil. That is the sweet spot, honey, about as thick as a pencil. Thinner stems dry out before they can root, and thick old woody ones are slow and stubborn. Give your stem a gentle bend. It should feel firm but still green and alive, not gray and dried out. 1 good stem is all it takes, but I always cut 3. Even Grandma Hazel lost a cutting now and again, and there is no shame in that. 3 cuttings, 3 chances. Step 2. Make your cut. Take your hand pruners and cut a piece about 8 inches long. That is 8 inches right around the length of a new pencil, so your stem can be its own measuring stick. First, snip the faded flower off the top. Now look closely along the stem for the little bumps where the leaves attach. Those little joints are called nodes, and they are the whole ballgame, because that is exactly where the new roots will grow from. Make your bottom cut just below one of those joints. Then strip off every leaf on the lower half of the stem. Leave 1 or 2 sets of leaves up at the top to keep the cutting breathing. Take your time with all of this. There is no rush at all. Step 3. Grandma Hazel's honey dip. Go on into the pantry and get out the honey jar. Pour about a teaspoon into a little dish. 1 teaspoon is plenty. Dip the bottom 2 inches of your cutting right into that honey and roll it around so the cut end and those bottom joints get a nice thin coat. Honey was Grandma's rooting helper, and it is still mine. It keeps that fresh cut clean and protected during the most delicate stretch of a young cutting's life, those first weeks before the roots take hold. Now plenty of folks use a store-bought rooting powder, and that works just fine if you already have some in the shed. But the honey has never let me down, and it costs pennies. Step 4. Pot it up. Fill your 6-inch clay pot with plain potting soil, nothing fancy. Water the soil first, so it is damp all the way through, like a wrung-out sponge. Poke a hole down the middle with a pencil or your finger. Slide your honey-dipped cutting into that hole deep enough that at least 2 of those little leaf joints sit under the soil. Remember, the joints are where the roots come from, so every joint you bury is another place roots can start. Press the soil and snug around the stem so it stands up straight on its own, and hold on to that thought about buried joints growing brand new roots, honey, because it is the very heart of the below-the-soil surprise we are working toward. Step 5. The milk jug greenhouse. This is my favorite bit of garden shed cleverness. Take your empty gallon milk jug and cut the bottom off with the kitchen scissors. Set that jug right down over your cutting like a little glass house and leave the cap off the top so fresh air can move through. That jug holds gentle moisture in around the leaves while the roots are still forming, and moisture is everything at this stage. Now carry the pot somewhere bright, but out of direct sunshine. The north side of the house is perfect, or the dappled shade under a big tree. Direct sun beating through that jug will cook your little cutting like a Sunday roast. So bright shade it is. Step 6, the 4-week wait. And now, honey, we reach for the hardest tool in the whole shed. Patience. For the next 4 weeks, your only job is keeping that soil damp. Poke your finger in about an inch, and if it feels dry, give it a gentle drink. That is the whole chore. Do not tug on the cutting. Do not lift it to peak, and do not fuss over it every morning. Around week 4, you may give the stem the lightest little tug. If it holds firm in the soil, roots have taken hold down there in the dark. And if you spot fresh new leaves unfurling up top, that is your rose saying thank you. 4 weeks, remember, and some cuttings take 5, and that is perfectly fine too. Now what if week 4 comes and one of your cuttings has gone brown? It happens, honey, even to me after 50 years. That is exactly why we cut 3 instead of 1. Pot up all 3, line up your little milk jugs on the porch like soldiers, and the odds land firmly on your side. 2 out of 3 is a fine average, and even 1 is a brand new rose for the price of a spoonful of honey. So there is the whole method, gathered up in one breath. 1 pencil-thick stem, a cut below the joint, a honey dip, a snug damp pot, a milk jug, and 4 weeks of patience. Which brings us at long last to the promise I made you at the very beginning. Why does a rose grown this way just about refuse to die when a $20 store rose gives up after 1 bad winter? The answer has been sitting under the soil this whole time. Come in close, because this is the part most folks have simply never been shown. Next time you are at the garden center, look at a rose bush right down at the base, and you will find a knobby, swollen knuckle sitting just above the roots. That knuckle is called a graft, and it means the rose is actually 2 different plants joined together. The pretty rose you fell in love with is only the top half. The bottom half, the roots, belongs to a completely different rose, a tough old wild one. The nurseries grow them that way because it is the fastest way to raise thousands of roses for sale, and there is no shame in it, but it leaves one weak spot, and that weak spot is the knuckle. When a hard winter comes, the cold kills the pretty rose on top, right down to the graft, but those tough wild roots underneath sail through just fine, and the next spring, those wild roots send up canes of their own. That is where the long thorny canes with the little dark red flowers come from, the ones I told you to tuck in the back of your mind. Your rose did not turn wild, honey. Your rose died at the knuckle, and the stranger living in its roots took over the pot. Now think about the little rose you and I just made together on the porch. It grew its own roots from its own buried joints, with a little help from a spoonful of honey. It is one plant from the tip of the bloom to the bottom of the root, all the way through. If a terrible winter ever knocks it clear to the ground, those roots will push up new canes, and every single one will be your rose, the same bloom, the same color, the same sweet smell. That is the whole secret, plain as day. A rose on its own roots can be knocked down, but it always comes back as itself. That is why Grandma Hazel's roses are still blooming in that old yard decades after she planted them, and why the cutting on your porch will likely outlive the both of us. And that little bit of understanding is exactly how my whole book works, honey, one gentle day at a time, for every flower in your yard. Debra's 30-day bloom protocol takes the guesswork out the same way we just did, day by day for 30 days. For your hydrangeas, your peonies, your dahlias, and these roses too. It is $17, marked down from $47, and that is less than 1 more store rose that will never see its second spring. Now go ahead and grab your phone and open up your camera, the same one you use to take pictures. Point it at that square code on your screen and hold it steady for a second. A little link will pop up. Give it a tap, and it will take you straight to the book. And if you are watching on your phone right now, the link is waiting for you right down below in the description. Take your time. There is no rush at all. I'll wait right here. So remember, 1 pencil-thick stem, a teaspoon of honey, a milk jug, and 4 weeks of patience gets you a rose on its own roots that just will not quit. Did your mother or your grandmother have her own flower trick? Share it below, honey. Those little family ways are exactly the kind of thing worth keeping. I read every single one. Next time, I am going to show you what I stir into my watering can every spring that turns my pink hydrangeas the deepest, truest blue you have ever seen, and it costs about $2 at the grocery store. Now go on out there and get your hands in the dirt, honey. I'll see you in the garden.